I'm Jessica Morgan, 33 years old, 3 months in a coma, and I woke up to an empty hospital room with a 2-word text from my billionaire father. We stopped paying. The machines keeping me alive had been funded by the hospital's charity fund while my family, the owners of Aeroglyph Dynamics, celebrated their freedom from the daughter who'd secretly engineered their entire empire. My stepmother, Kimberly, had already packed up my apartment. My half-brother, Ryan, had already claimed my office. My father, Michael, had already signed papers to have me declared mentally incompetent. They thought a slick road and a tree had solved their 15-year problem. The unwanted daughter who knew too much, worked too hard, and reminded them of the brilliant woman they'd spent a decade trying to erase. What they didn't know was that my mother had left me more than memories. She'd left me the proof, the power, and the legal arsenal to dismantle every lie they'd built their fortune on. The first thing I noticed wasn't the pain but the silence. Hospital rooms are never truly quiet. There's always the steady beep of monitors, the soft squeak of nurses' shoes. But this silence felt deliberate, personal. My eyes struggled to focus on the ceiling. I recognized it. The same view my mother had in her final days 15 years ago. Back then this room was a revolving door of family and flowers. Now a single folded piece of paper sat on the bedside table. A nurse appeared, her eyes widening. "Miss Morgan. You're awake. How long?" My voice was a dry rasp. 3 months, she said, her expression pained. "Is there anyone we should call?" "My father, Michael Morgan." Her face fell. "He's the one who left the note. 2 weeks ago he came in person. Said the family would no longer be covering your medical expenses." My hand trembled as I unfolded the paper. My father's handwriting was as precise and cold as his business contracts. We stopped paying. Not even a signature. In 3 months, not one visit. The nurse touched my shoulder. "There's someone here to see you though." 2 men. They've been waiting every single day. David Chin walked in first, my mother's stoic estate lawyer, his face a mask of professional calm that barely hid his relief. Behind him, a man I vaguely recognized, tall and sharp in a suit that screamed venture capital. Christopher Vance. "Jessica," David said, his voice tight. "Thank God you're awake. What are you doing here?" "Protecting your interests. As I promised your mother I would." Christopher stepped forward. "The annual tech summit is in 72 hours. Your father plans to announce a complete corporate restructuring, writing you out of everything. He's telling the board you're legally incapacitated." My head spun. "He stopped paying. He abandoned me." "And in doing so," David interrupted, a grim smile on his lips, "he made the most expensive mistake of his life. He triggered the one clause in your mother's trust he never knew existed." He opened his briefcase. "Your mother didn't just leave you a fortune, Jessica. She left you a $950 million weapon. One that activated the exact moment your father abandoned you. For 15 years I'd been the family ghost. Visible enough to be useful, invisible enough to be forgotten. It started the day my mother died. I was 18, standing in my father's study while Kimberly, my new stepmother, measured the windows for new curtains before we'd even held the funeral. She called me his little charity case, a reminder of the brilliant woman my father had actually loved, the woman whose mind had built Aeroglyph Dynamics from the ground up. While my half-brother Ryan got the corner office at 24, I worked from a converted supply closet on the server floor. While he fumbled through board meetings, I ghost-wrote the data architecture proposals that landed our biggest contracts. The Aeronav acquisition, my analysis. The federal drone contract, my algorithms, coded at 3 in the morning from my apartment while Ryan took credit at the 9 a.m. presentation. "You should be grateful," Kimberly reminded me every Thanksgiving. "Not many girls with your background get these opportunities." My background. Daughter of Jennifer Hayes, the data architect who turned a garage startup into a tech behemoth before cancer took her at 42. The woman whose strategies my father still used, whose daughter he couldn't bear to look at because I had her eyes. But there were things about my mother they never knew. The late-night meetings with David Chin, the encrypted files, the quiet transfers of authority that happened while everyone was focused on the visible empire. "Your mother knew this day might come," David had told me years ago. "She just didn't know what form it would take." Now, in this sterile hospital room, I finally understood. "Your mother was never just a co-founder," David said, pulling a document from his briefcase that made my breath catch. It was the original incorporation filing. Jennifer Hayes 60% owner. Michael Morgan 40% owner. But all the public records list him as the sole founder. "A convenient revision after her death," Christopher Vance interjected. One that worked because your mother kept her ownership in a private trust. She wanted Michael to be the face of the company, but she never, ever gave up control. David handed me another document, this one more recent. Before she passed, your mother established the Hayes Revocable Trust. $950 million in assets, plus all her controlling shares. But here's the part Michael never knew. She amended the terms. What terms? David's eyes gleamed with a lawyer's righteous fire. The trust becomes irrevocable and transfers all assets and voting rights to you under one specific condition: abandonment during a period of medical incapacitation. The moment Michael signed those papers, he triggered the transfer. As of 2 weeks ago, you don't just have the money. You have her shares, her board votes, and this. He pulled out a small, heavy plastic card. A security badge for Aeroglyph Dynamics with my photo and an authorization level I'd never seen before. Executive override. Your mother had this made years ago. Grants you access to everything. Every server, every document, every room in the building. Including the boardroom. I stared at the badge. She planned all of this. She knew his nature, David said softly. She just made sure that when he finally showed it, you'd be ready. My phone rang at 6 p.m. Michael's name on the screen. The first time he'd called in 3 months. Jessica. His voice was cold, transactional. I heard you're awake. Let's not pretend, shall we? You need to sign the incapacitation papers. Ryan will be taking over your project portfolio. I've been in a coma for 3 months. And the company moved on. Sign the papers. You stopped paying my medical bills. A beat of silence. The company must allocate resources efficiently. The company or you. His tone sharpened. Sign the papers, Jessica. Don't make this difficult. I need time to think. You have until Thursday morning. If those papers aren't signed, I'll have to inform the board of your mental instability. Is that what you want? Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a quiet exit. Take it. And if I don't? Then you'll learn what it really means to be alone. No job, no references. I'll make sure every tech firm in the country knows you're unstable. Like you told them Mom was? The line went silent, then dangerously quiet. Your mother was sick. Her mind was perfect. Sign the papers, Jessica, or I'll prove to everyone just how much you take after her. He hung up. David, who had put the call on a recorded speaker, simply shook his head. He just threatened you. On the record. Kimberly arrived the next morning, a Category 5 hurricane in Chanel, her lawyer trailing behind her like a nervous pilot fish. Jessica, she said my name like it was a piece of lint on her blazer. You look conscious. She dropped a folder on my bed, her perfume choking the sterile air. Sign these. We're offering you a severance package. $75,000. More than generous, considering. Considering what? Considering you've been a drain on this family for 15 years. She admired her manicure. Do you have any idea what Michael spent on you? On your mother's medical bills. My mother had her own money. Kimberly's laugh was like shattering glass. Your mother had delusions and debt. Michael saved you both out of pity. Is that the story you tell people? It's the truth. You've been living on our charity. But that ends now. 15 years of 18-hour days is charity? What work? Her voice rose. Hiding in that closet, pretending to contribute. Ryan does the real work. You're just overhead we no longer need. $75,000 for building 40% of this company's value. Her face flushed. You built nothing. You're nothing. Without us, you'd be on the street. Delusional. Just like your mother. She leaned in. Sign the papers or I will personally ensure you never even get an interview again. Ryan swaggered in an hour later, smelling of cologne and entitlement. Hey sis. Rough patch, huh? He pulled out his phone, showing me a bank transfer screen. 10 million. Gish. Today. All you have to do is sign everything over and disappear. Go to Europe. Start fresh. And you become the face of the company. I already am. This just makes it official. Come on, Jessica, you were never executive material. All that time with your spreadsheets. That's not leadership. What about the federal drone contract? Who structured that? Ryan laughed. The consulting team, obviously. I managed them brilliantly. What was the lead contractor's name? His smile faltered. Look, 10 million is the final offer. Take it or you get nothing. He stood to leave. Family? You were never really family, Jessica. Just ask Dad. I was discharged into a secure suite at the Four Seasons, paid for by Christopher Vance. Became my war room. The view overlooked the entire city. A kingdom my mother had built and my father had stolen. For the next 48 hours we didn't sleep. We hunted. The first step was the override badge. I plugged it into a terminal David had procured. The screen lit up not with a standard login, but with a system schematic I recognized instantly. My mother's back-end architecture. It was beautiful. Full administrative access to Aeroglyph's servers, David explained, his voice filled with awe. Every email Michael ever sent, every deleted file, every hidden ledger. Your mother built a ghost door and it's been waiting for you for 15 years. The access was absolute. I dove into the project archives, cross-referencing my personal work logs with the official company presentations. There was, in black and white, my code, my data models, my strategic frameworks, all presented under Ryan's name. We downloaded everything, terabytes of irrefutable proof. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. Emails between Michael and Kimberly from years ago discussing how to manage my influence, how to keep me contained and useful but powerless. They called me the asset. Not a daughter, not family. An asset. Christopher Vance worked his own magic. He arranged a series of encrypted video calls with 5 key board members, the ones who had been quietly questioning Ryan's sudden genius for years. He didn't give them everything, just enough. A redacted strategy document I'd written, placed side by side with the one Ryan had presented. They're listening, Christopher reported, hanging up from a call with the head of the audit committee. They've suspected for years, but they had no proof. Now they're ready to move if someone with legitimate standing makes the first play. Then David found the criminal twist. It was buried in the SEC filings from 3 months ago, right after my accident. Michael filed a disclosure, David said, his face grim. He pointed to a line on the screen. He used a falsified preliminary medical report, one he commissioned privately, to declare a key executive, you, permanently incapacitated. He used that filing as justification to restructure Ryan's compensation package and grant him stock options that should have been yours. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This is federal fraud, Christopher said, his eyes wide. He lied to the Securities and Exchange Commission. He could go to prison for this. The final piece of the plan clicked into place. This wasn't just about reclaiming my inheritance or my work. This was about a corporate execution. David printed the falsified SEC filing, the authentic hospital report, and the section of the U.S. code Michael had violated. He placed them in a stark red folder. You have the truth, the shares, and the law on your side, he said. Thursday morning, you don't walk in there as a victim, Jessica. You walk in as the consequence. I looked at the file. The ghost in the code was finally about to materialize. And she was coming for everything. Thursday morning. The Hyatt Regency was a swarm of dark suits and predatory smiles. The air buzzed with the clink of coffee cups and the low hum of 1,000 private conversations about money and power. I watched from a service corridor, a ghost in plain sight, as my family held court in the grand lobby. Michael, the charming patriarch, shaking hands with investors. Kimberly, the elegant corporate wife, laughing with the wives of board members. And Ryan, surrounded by a crowd of younger executives, pontificating on a future he hadn't built. The plan was to enter at 10:29, 1 minute before Michael took the stage. As I waited, my heart hammering a steady, cold rhythm against my ribs, a man approached me. He was older, with a kind face and a uniform that identified him as the summit's head of security. Robert Miller. Miss Morgan, he asked quietly. I braced myself. My father's orders. I was told to remove you on sight if you appeared, he confirmed, my stomach tightening. He said you were unwell. A potential disruption. He paused, then looked me directly in the eye. But he forgot something. My wife works in your R&D department. She knows who really wrote the code for the federal drone contract. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn black notebook. He opened it. Inside were pages of dates, times, and notes, all in precise handwriting. I work the late shift a lot, he said, his voice dropping lower. For years I've seen you coming in at 10 p.m. and leaving at 4 a.m. The night before the Aeronav acquisition was announced, you were the only one in the building. The weekend Ryan supposedly finalized the federal contract, he was in Aspen. I saw the pictures on his social media. You were in the server room for 36 straight hours. He flipped through the pages. It was a log. A secret history of my work, my dedication. A ledger kept by a man I'd never even met. I always cross-referenced it, he continued. The nights you worked the hardest were always followed by a big announcement from your brother. I just wanted you to know. Some of us always knew. We saw you. He handed me the notebook. The secret admirer's ledger. This quiet, unexpected validation from a stranger was more powerful than any stock certificate. It wasn't about the $950 million anymore. It was about the truth. I looked at the monitor. Michael was walking toward the stage, his face beaming with pride. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. And now, a man who needs no introduction, our visionary CEO Michael Morgan. As my father prepared to announce my tragic incapacitation to the world, I clutched the security chief's notebook. My resolve wasn't just firm. It was forged in steel. I walked onto the stage as Michael was basking in the opening applause. The sound of 2,000 attendees gasping at once is something you feel in your bones. My father's smile froze, then shattered. My stepmother's face went white. My brother looked like he was about to be physically ill. The walk to the podium was the longest 10 seconds of my life. Jessica, my father hissed into the microphone, his voice cracking. You shouldn't be here. You're not well. I calmly took the second microphone. Good morning. I apologize for the interruption. My voice was clear, steady, amplified to every corner of the vast room. But I believe the shareholders deserve the truth. Security started forward, but I held up my mother's override badge. They stopped dead. I have executive override authority, granted by the majority shareholder and true founder of this company, Jennifer Hayes. The room erupted in murmurs. I turned to the audience. For 15 years I have been the ghost in this company's code. The architect behind 40% of its growth. And today I'm here to show you my work. The massive screen behind me, meant for Michael's triumphant presentation, flickered to life. On it appeared the original incorporation document. As you can see, I announced, Jennifer Hayes owns 60%. Michael Morgan 40%. It's a forgery, he shouted. But his voice lacked conviction. That's when Christopher Vance stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, the board has long been concerned about an efficiency paradox at Aeroglyph. Projects credited to Ryan Morgan were executed with a level of genius and efficiency that his personal management style simply could not explain. He let that hang in the air. We now understand why. The workflow was engineered to have Jessica complete the core innovation in isolation, while the system automatically branded every output, every report with Ryan's name. Her contributions were made structurally invisible. The next slide showed the falsified SEC report next to my authentic medical records. This, I said, my voice ringing with cold fury, is federal fraud. The allied board members stood as one. I call for an immediate vote, the head of the audit committee announced. A vote of no confidence in Michael Morgan as CEO. It was a slaughter. They were stripped of their titles and their power in less than 5 minutes. The board then voted unanimously to elect me to my mother's seat. In the aftermath, there was no gloating. I didn't fire them. That would have been my father's move. I was named Chief Strategy Officer. I reassigned Ryan to an entry-level data analytics position. Learn the business from the ground up, I told him. The way Mom would have made me. With the first disbursement from the trust, I established the Jennifer Hayes Foundation for Women in Technology. Peace didn't come from revenge. It came from restoration. From seeing my mother's name on a legacy of empowerment, not on a tombstone they barely visited. The ghost was finally home.